Amy's art classes. Amy moved between the easels, pausing to study a student's cautious brushstrokes.
Remember, we're here to experience.
She encouraged.
It's all just possibilities at this stage.
Across the room, Caroline's hand still hovered above her canvas. When Amy approached, she saw the woman's knuckles were white around the brush.
I can't get the sky right,
Caroline whispered.
We can always fix it.
Amy replied, the phrase automatic after so many years of teaching.
That's the beauty of oil painting.
Caroline finally touched the canvas, making a careful stroke. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, Amy's classes filled the community center with adults, rediscovering what most had given up after childhood. Her approach made her especially popular with beginners and those who weren't naturally talented. She had a gift for helping people past their fears, a gift she'd developed since discovering painting in her late 20s, after years in a job she'd never loved. When the last student left, Amy stayed behind. She pulled out her own half-finished canvas, a forest scene for an upcoming show at a local gallery. Her shoulders tensed as she looked at it critically. The trees lacked depth. The perspective felt off. She'd repainted the foreground 3 times already. Amy sighed and mixed a deeper green. Her brush moved with careful precision as she reworked the same section again. The critical voice in her head would never be allowed in her classroom, but somehow, with her own work, it felt justified. Each stroke was calculated and judged before the next. After an hour, she stepped back, frowning. Still not right. After getting home, Amy opened her sketchbook for her nightly practice. She drew a vase of flowers 3 times, each slightly more refined than the last. The final one was better, but the proportions of the rightmost flower were still off. She closed the book with a familiar weight. She glanced at her husband Adam, reading nearby. Years ago, he used to comment on her paintings, but she'd always responded by pointing out the flaws he'd missed. Eventually, he'd stopped saying anything about her work. She didn't blame him. The following evening, Amy had just shown a technique for creating texture when Michael, an engineer who'd been attending for several months, arrived late.
I'm so sorry.
He looked flustered. He gestured to a small girl at his side with dark curly hair and a bright yellow sweater.
Childcare fell through. This is my daughter, Lily. I hope it's okay if she stays. She can just sit and draw.
Of course.
Amy nodded.
Would you like to join us, Lily? We have an extra easel.
Lily's eyes widened.
I can paint too? For real?
She was already bouncing on her toes, eyes darting around the studio at all the colors.
Absolutely.
Michael set up while Amy adjusted a small easel to Lily's height. She provided oil paints, brushes, and a small canvas.
Just explore,
Amy told her, noticing how eagerly the child reached for the brightest red.
I'm gonna make the best painting ever!
Lily announced loudly, causing several adults to glance over with amused smiles. As class continued, Amy found her attention drawn repeatedly to the father-daughter pair. Michael approached his canvas with the careful thinking of an engineer, each stroke planned, each color choice calculated. He frequently stepped back, looking at his work with a slight frown, making exact adjustments. Lily, meanwhile, painted with complete focus. She switched colors without hesitation, sometimes using her fingers instead of brushes, occasionally talking to her emerging artwork. Amy noticed her fingers twitched as Lily smeared paint with her palms.
You need more purple.
Lily told her canvas seriously.
Lots more purple.
She plunged her fingers directly into the paint and swirled them across the canvas, leaving streaks and smudges.
Now you're beautiful,
she exclaimed, tilting her head to examine her work from different angles. Amy watched as Lily mixed yellow and blue directly on the canvas, creating uneven streaks of green. She stepped toward the child, her hand instinctively reaching to show the proper technique for mixing colors, then hesitated. The girl was completely absorbed, delight visible on her face as the colors changed. Amy's hand fell back to her side. Michael had been building up the sky of his lake scene, carefully blending blues to suggest late afternoon. As he worked on cloud formations, his brush slipped, creating a dark streak across the carefully painted blue.
Damn,
he muttered, then glanced quickly at his daughter.
Sorry.
His shoulders dropped as he stared at the mark. Amy moved toward him, ready with her usual encouragement. Before she could speak, Lily looked up from her painting, her hands stained with blues and greens, her yellow sweater now sporting several new colors.
Why are you sad, Daddy?
She asked, tilting her head.
That looks like our trip to the lake when it started raining. Remember how we danced in it?
Michael blinked, looking at his canvas with new eyes. The accidental streak did look like a sudden shower, the kind that appears out of nowhere on summer afternoons.
You're right.
He said slowly, his engineer's precision giving way to something softer.
It does look like that day.
Instead of reaching for a new canvas as Amy had expected, Michael began working with the mistake, adding lighter streaks to suggest rain, changing the lighting to show a storm's approach. His expression shifted from frustration to curiosity. His stiff posture relaxed. Amy felt a strange discomfort as she watched. When had she last allowed an unplanned element to stay in her own work? Her own paintings were exercises in scrutiny, each element doubted, questioned, then reworked until it stopped bothering her. "We can always fix it," she had told Caroline earlier. Yet she realized she didn't use the phrase to mean explore freely. For her, it meant correct until it stops feeling wrong.
Miss Amy? Miss Amy!
Lily called, waving her paint-covered hands.
I made a blob. Come see my BLOB.
She pointed proudly to a shapeless form on her canvas, a mix of at least 6 colors swirled together.
What's special about your blob?
Amy asked, approaching carefully.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Lily laughed, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. When class ended, the students gathered their supplies. Lily proudly displayed several paintings, each one a completely different approach.
I made 5,
she announced, laying them side by side on a table, accidentally knocking over an empty water cup in her excitement.
Oops! Sorry.
She giggled, then immediately returned to her display.
5 whole paintings. Which one is the best?
Lily asked, looking up at Amy with curiosity rather than worry. The question caught Amy off guard.
They're all interesting in different ways.
She replied carefully.
Which one was the most fun to make?
Lily immediately pointed to a swirling composition of blues and greens.
This one. I used my fingers for the swirly parts, and I pretended I was a tornado while I did it.
She demonstrated by spinning in a circle, nearly colliding with another easel before Michael gently steadied her.
Then perhaps that's the best one, because you enjoyed making it the most.
Lily thought about this, then nodded seriously.
Yes, this one is the best because it was the most fun. But that one,
she pointed to another painting with bright red streaks.
That one makes me feel happy when I look at it. So maybe it's the best for looking.
Thanks for letting Lily join us,
Michael said as they prepared to leave.
She had a wonderful time.
She has a wonderful approach, so free.
Michael nodded, watching his daughter carefully slide her paintings into a folder.
Watching her tonight reminded me why I wanted to take these classes in the first place.
He paused, looking slightly embarrassed.
I'm not naturally artistic, and I definitely don't have illusions about becoming a great painter. But I remembered how in primary school, when we painted during art class, I loved those moments when I was completely absorbed, when time seemed to disappear.
When we are completely present in the experience.
Amy nodded, the words feeling hollow in her mouth. When had she last experienced that herself? As they prepared to leave, Lily tugged on Amy's sleeve.
Miss Amy, I made this for you.
She held out one of her paintings, the swirling composition of blues and greens with finger-painted patterns.
For me?
Amy asked, genuinely touched. Lily nodded firmly.
You should keep it because it was the most fun to make. Because you look like you need more fun,
she added with the direct honesty only children possess, before Michael gently guided her toward the door. After they left, Amy stayed in the classroom. She looked at Lily's painting with its joyful, uninhibited energy, and found a place for it on the wall. Then, instead of working on her exhibition piece as planned, she set up a fresh canvas. She began without sketching first, something she hadn't done in years. When her brush moved toward the blue she always started with, She deliberately chose orange instead. Her hand felt awkward, uncertain. Twice she reached for a cloth to wipe away a stroke that didn't match her mental image. Twice she stopped, looking at Lily's painting on the wall. The third time, her hand paused midair, then returned to the canvas to add more of the wrong color instead of removing it. For the first time in years, Amy lost track of time at her own canvas. Finally, she stepped back, looking at the painting and touching her neck. The muscles there had softened slightly. The painting still wasn't quite right, but that no longer seemed to matter.